If it wasn't already obvious from the title of this video and from how I look, I'm a millennial. Now, when it comes to design, I thought I was staying pretty relevant. I'm pretty good at keeping on top of trends, making sure I'm researching what's going on at the moment, what's popular, and things like that in the design world. But just recently, I realized that my designs feel a little bit millennial. For a long time, millennials have been the driving force behind design trends, but in the last few years, we've started to see a bit of a shift where Gen Z are starting to be more the main drivers of the trends that we're seeing. So I decided to do some digging and really wrap my head around how Gen Z think and the design aesthetic that appeals to them. Along the way, I began to realize there's a few mindset shifts that need to take place because what millennials have been through, what we're influenced by, is quite different to Gen Z. Now, before you start worrying about this and thinking, oh no, does this mean I have to change my branding? Do I need to start doing completely different things because I've been caught up in the wrong kind of style? First of all, take a step back and actually consider, are you trying to target Gen Z? Now, this is the age group of about 13 to 28-year-olds at the moment. So these are mostly going to be in their 20s. So if you're trying to target that group, then you may need to consider this. But if you are not targeting this group, then don't worry about it. It's really important to know who you're trying to target. And if you have lost touch with the audience that you're targeting, then taking that time to get to know them better. And a little side note too, when it comes to your branding, if you are not Gen Z but you want to attract Gen Zs, you don't have to do a complete Gen Z design if it feels very uncomfortable, if it doesn't feel you. You still want to be true to who you are as well as appealing to that target audience. So you may want to do some sort of mesh where you pulling a few influences of what they are into as well as still keeping true to some of the things that you like and finding your own unique little middle ground. So why I think this is challenging for millennials is the fact that we need to make some mindset shifts. So before we get into the differences in design, I wanted to actually talk about these mindset shifts so you can start to think about how you need to shift the way you think to think more like a Gen Z. So shift one is understanding how each generation sees vintage. Now we all love a bit of vintage retro feel when it comes to our designs, but that actually means different things to different people. Millennials consider vintage things between the 70s to 90s kind of time frame. We sort of think of that as vintage, whereas Gen Z think of vintage more as the Y2K era. So if you think about it, it's sort of around about the time that they were born. So around about that sort of decade of birth is around the time that they consider to be vintage. So when we go, okay, I'm going to create a design that has a vintage feel to it, we're creating stuff that actually feels really old to them. Whereas when they think of vintage, they're doing things that are more Y2K inspired. So things like digital cameras, old CRT computer monitors, and flip phones and CDs. Whereas millennials, we're more thinking of things like typewriters, old home phones, cassette tapes, records, and Polaroids. So this is why it's really important to realize the different shift in mindset with this. So if you want to create something that has some vintagey inspired elements to it, you need to consider what they actually consider is vintage. Now, our second mindset shift is influence. The things that millennials have been influenced by are very different to the things that Gen Z have been influenced by. Millennials were the 90s kids. We grew up in a time before the internet, mobile phones, and social media. And then as teenagers, we began to see it introduced and began to experiment with it and get excited to, try it out and learn that world. So we were sort of the frontier of that, we moved from that more analog world to that digital world. Whereas Gen Z, they were born into it straight away. They had the internet, they had social media, they had smartphones, all those things were already there. The millennials have taken influence from things like magazines, Pinterest, Tumblr. So Gen Z, as I said, they grew up with this technology and they also at the same time had a lot of chaos going on. There was 9/11, there was COVID, there was, global warming and all sorts of climate problems. There's a lot going on. And so they're very much influenced by things on the internet as well as this distrust of authority. So they take their influence from things like TikTok, Discord, and of course, meme art. There is also the anti-design movement where they're going against the grain of normal design and actually making things that are intentionally ugly and messy. Now, this doesn't mean that you can just not be good at design and create ugly designs that doesn't matter because they'll love it. What it means is just breaking free from the grid, not just having these beautiful structured designs, but being a little bit more free and creative with it. And as I learned in design school, in order to break the rules, you first need to know the rules. So this doesn't mean that you can just ditch graphic design altogether and never understand it. It means first you need to understand it so that you can more strategically break the rules and do it well, so the design still is good while being bad at the same time.
Alright, so when it comes to fonts, so the millennial style fonts are things like calligraphy, thin elegance fonts, thin elegant serifs, typewriter font for when we want something that feels a bit retro, and also when it comes to serif fonts, Helvetica and Futura are really popular. So if you look at these examples here, you can see they're those very classic millennial style fonts. Really went for styles that felt very romantic, elegant, beautiful, very refined, and things that made things, feel very elegant and high end. But Gen Z, very different. They want things that feel more fun and playful. So they're going for fonts that are more thick, bubble, handwritten sans serifs, bold retro fonts. They like fonts like Poppins rather than Helvetica. And they also have this style they love where they put a script font at the start, then followed by a serif font. So they're more playful with their fonts. They're going away from this real elegant, beautiful, refined style of trying to look really as beautiful as possible to being more playful and fun. Now for colour. So we have that typical millennial beige. So this avoidant of anything bright and super colourful, but these really soft tones. So things like pastels, beiges, all these soft, light colours. And I think again, we were after that really refined, elegant, high-end kind of style. We didn't want to feel too childlike or playful. We wanted it to feel more refined and high-end and elegant and that sort of feeling. And so it's changing that mindset again of thinking, no, we can have fun, we can be more playful, we don't have to make it look so elegant and refined. But again, also that is a thing where you have to think about your own brand. Who are you targeting? What kind of feeling are you trying to create? And what is important to you in that regard? So don't just think, oh, I want to, be more up to date, so I need to change to more this Gen Z style. Do consider what your brand is all about, who you're trying to target, the kind of message you're trying to put out there. Don't just simply do this because that's the in thing right now. But I wanted to go through this because it's really good to understand what's going on, the changes that are happening, because if you're trying to stay relevant, if your audience is shifting, because maybe you said, I'm always targeting people in their late 20s, well, that is shifting. They're no longer millennials and now Gen Z. And so you do need to consider, well, what does that audience actually want? What is appealing to them? And now Gen Z are moving on to more these bright, poppy, playful colours. So lots more bright colours, florals, really strong, bold colours. Now also, this is a generalisation. There of course are millennials that love colour and have always used a lot of colour, and there are Gen Zs that do like more those beigey tones. So it is a bit of a generalization with all of this. Really, it's a generalization, but it just helps you see that overall picture of the way design is changing and the things different generations prefer, because I think it's really valuable to just get your head around this, understand what is happening. I think this will also help train your eye. As you start looking at graphics online, you will start to pick up, that's a typical millennial kind of style. Oh, that's very typical Gen Z sort of style. And it will start to retrain your brain a bit for noticing these things. So sometimes doing that deep research of actually seeing what's going on is going to help train your eye so you can start to see what is going on, and you can start to pick up on this stuff more easily. Now there is layouts. So again, millennials, we are going for that really beautiful, professional, elegant kind of feel with clean layouts, nice grids, very neat and professional looking. We really stuck to the grid. We wanted everything to look really refined, beautiful, and wonderfully laid out so it looks very professional and really calming too. It has this very calm sort of feeling to it. Whereas Gen Z, we've gone messy, scrapbook, collage, a bit like a teenage diary. There's sort of a mess everywhere, really playful and fun. There's also early 2000s computer graphics mixed in. So it's this mix of old and new, using things that are tactile like paper and tape and all that sort of scrapbooky sort of stuff, but mixing that with computer things. So they're putting things like images of folders you can see there, or screenshots from your phone or your computer. So really integrating modern tech with that nostalgic sort of scrapbooky feel as well. So it's really messy and playful and bringing together the past and present. And a big part of this again is that change in mindset. So Gen Z, they're growing up with all this technology. They want to bring a bit of that, that hand-done thing again, of making it feel a bit scrapbooky and playful and fun and not so rigid and on the computer. Then we have photography styles. And again, it's that same feeling again. So millennials, we were after that soft, gentle, calm, curated, really high-end feeling like it's really professional, beautiful, calming, elegant, just really beautifully done. But then the Gen Z photography, they're going for more bold, high contrast, really colourful, lo-fi, like they've just taken it, with a digital camera or on their phone, those real in-the-moment shots. So it feels more just like the average person has taken this photo. It's really everyday, just really candid, rather than very curated and very careful like the millennial style. All right, now if you are trying to make this shift, if you are really interested in, okay, I need to actually shift some of my design into more of a Gen Z style, maybe that's your target audience, you really want to know how you can actually do this. So I've got a few steps for you to help you work through this so that you can start to shift that style if you need to. So step one is understanding the Gen Z visual culture. So their culture is a little bit different from millennials. So Gen Z grew up online. So their design preferences are influenced by things like nostalgia and chaos. So think Y2K, vaporwave, zine layouts, glitch effects. DIY and imperfect aesthetics, so rough cutouts, hand-drawn doodles, grainy textures, lo-fi edits. And then bold fonts and expressive types, so oversized serif fonts, distorted type, neon gradients, retro 90s fonts, things like that. Then short form, scrollable and punchy. So they're really the TikTok generation. So you want to design for TikTok, IG Reels, carousels, memes, story graphics. So really thinking about that short form sort of thing and how you can really create things that are very punchy and short rather than, building up and taking a while to, understand it. And then with color, we have pastel, neon, grunge color schemes that scream youth culture, so lavender plus acid green, pink plus blue haze, orange plus brown, things like that. And then photography, as I spoke about before, photos that are raw with personality, so unfiltered, high flash, candid, phone camera aesthetic. So things that it just feels like it's not that professional photography, but more just the average person has taken this photo. Now, step two, adopting the Gen Z mindset. So this can be probably the most hardest part, is not just trying to imitate the style, but really understanding their mindset and how they're thinking. So speaking their language. So if you really are targeting them, it can help to understand some of their language. Things like bet, no cap, vibe check, it's giving, riz, that sort of thing. And embrace that meme style phrasing and irony. So you may even want to spend some time researching and getting to know them, seeing the kind of humor that they're into, that sort of thing. It can help if you're trying to target that audience. And you want to be real, not polished. So we don't want to be over professional. You want to really show some personality, be a little bit messy on purpose, show behind the scenes, those failed shots, unfiltered moments, things like that. You want to be emotionally honest. So Gen Z really values vulnerability and authenticity over perfection. So again, going away from that millennial, everything has to be so perfect and elegant and beautiful and really refined. No, we want a bit of vulnerability. We want it to be a bit messy, that sort of thing. And you want to add some self-aware humor or meta references too. And be value-driven. Things like sustainability, inclusivity, social impact, all those things are really important. So it's really important to really tap into your values as a brand and really bring them to the forefront. Now, step three, visual techniques to use. So quick few do's and don'ts. So do mix retro and digital aesthetics. So as I said before, that mix of the modern with things like Y2K. So a little bit of past and present mixed together. Use punchy short headlines like big mood or not me designing this at 2 a.m. So we really want to, so it's again tapping into that culture, the sort of things that they find funny, the words that they use, that sort of thing, and using that in your copywriting. So obviously this is more design oriented, what I'm talking about, but if that is your target audience, it also is important to think about the copywriting as well. Then create movement, so things like GIFs, animation, scroll effects. So add more movement to your design, don't just have static graphics. Add things like stickers, emojis, scribbles, layers. Start getting really creative and layer things up. And use collage styles and unconventional layouts. So moving away from the grid a little bit. As I said before though, it is important to first understand those rules, know how grid works before you're breaking the grid. sometimes it's more a subtle use of the grid rather than a super obvious use of the grid. So sort of a base of using the grid, but then starting to layer things on top that are moving out of the grid. So it's sort of about understanding it and starting with it, but then also rebelling against it a little bit as well. So what you want to be avoiding if you don't want to come across too millennial is clean minimalism with rigid grids. So as I said before, the grids, we don't want to be too rigid with it. We want to use it as a starting point, then move out of it a little bit to be creative. If it's way too rigid in the grid, it's going to look very millennial. Then we don't want to overuse things like Helvetica, and we don't want to be overusing those neutral beige tones. So again, this can be hard if it is very much a habit. Something I've started to notice as I've got, in my late 30s now is, you look at older people and think, why are they stuck in a generation? Why are they still got the same, clothing and furniture, and they're sort of stuck in that style? It can sort of, part of it is habit too. You can just get in the habit of, this is what you're into, this is your style. And you sort of have to break out of that habit a little bit and start trying new things. And too much corporate cool is another thing too. You don't want to feel too corporate-y or too try-hard cool. When corporate companies try to be cool and it feels very try-hard, Gen Z are going to see through that. So it's more about being very genuine to who you are, not being too try-hard trying to be cool, but rather just genuinely your own personality and doing it in a way that suits you. So don't try too hard to try and be more Gen Z or fit in with them, but let your own personality shine. Just sort of breaking that professional of I've got to be super professional, but just letting a bit more of yourself shining through.
Now, if you need a head start with trying to design like a Gen Z, if this feels a little intimidating and you want something just to start to ease you into it, I do have a carousel set that is sort of that Gen Z style. If you want to give these templates a go to start to get you in that zone, trying to think in that way, it can be a great head start to try and design a bit more in their style. So if you want to check that out, you can find the link in the description below. Now, as I was researching this, I found that a lot of really awesome elements that are very Gen Z were actually pro Canva elements. So if you're not using Canva Pro yet, I really recommend you give it a go if you are using it as your primary tool for creating designs for your business. So if you're keen to give Canva Pro a try and get 30 days free to give it a go, see what you think, you'll find my affiliate link down in the description below, which also helps support me. So to wrap up, this isn't just a shift in design aesthetic, this is also a mindset and communication shift. We're really thinking about how Gen Z communicate, how they think, and what influences them. And as I said at the beginning, this doesn't mean losing your own design style. It's just about actually understanding how they think, and if you want to attract them, if they're part of your audience that you want to attract, how you can integrate some of their aesthetic into your own style so that you can find your own balance where you're showing a bit of who you are while also attracting them. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts on this because this is something I spent a little bit of time researching, but there's probably a lot of things I didn't cover and maybe I didn't realize. I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts down in the comments below. So feel free to have a chat because this is an interesting topic that I don't think anyone's really talking about, and I think it's something we should discuss so we can all stay relevant, because even if you're a Gen Z and think you know what you're doing now, as the Gen Alphas come up, you're going to want to know, how can I stay relevant? How can I attract the next generation?